Hi there. So today we are going to have a functional course on taxes and fiscal position. First, I would like to introduce some key concepts used in this course. We will see taxes and fiscal positions, where you can see that tax is usually a sum of money demanded by a government. You all know what a VAT is, I think. We'll see in Odoo how you can configure and use those taxes. Fiscal positions, on the other hand, define how you are going to apply specific taxes to a customer or a vendor, depending usually of the location they have. So let's say, for example, that you are in the EU, you are a EU member state, and you want to sell in your own country. You will have a specific set of taxes being applied, and while if you want to sell to another state in the EU, you will have another set of taxes being applied. Or you can apply taxes according to the location of your partners. That's the reason we created the fiscal positions. It's to mention that some taxes needs to be applied in some specific cases, while in some other cases we have to switch taxes. We are going to see how these all work in a few minutes. So in a few seconds we are going to see how we can make use of these taxes, but first I'd like to check with you how we can configure the taxes, and then we will use them by creating a vendor invoice, and then we will also show the effect and the impact of using those taxes by printing the tax report. In order to have a look at the taxes configuration, you have to go in the accounting module, and you can check in configuration taxes, and you can see all of the taxes that are created at the moment in Odoo. You may be familiar with our localization system, where if you are part of one of the countries for which we have a localization module, you may have all the taxes of your country being imported at the moment of the installation of the module about the localization. You can check if your localization is existing by going to the apps and then checking for your country. Let's say if I check for France by removing the apps, you see that here we have specific modules about the accounting. And if I install those modules, you will get the chart of account, but also the chart of taxes. We have lots of them, lots of that kind of modules, and usually they are located under the name of L10N for the localization. And you can see that here we have 97 different charts or module for the chart of accounts. And usually when you install one of those modules, the taxes will be installed at the same time. Let's go back to the configuration of the taxes. And you can see that by default here, by installing the customizable chart of account, the one we usually use for the US, you can see that by default we have two different taxes, one for the sales part and one for the purchase part. Both of those taxes are a 15% tax, and if I have a look at the definition of the tax, you can see that first you have a tax name, and you have a tax scope. You can see that the taxes can be applied on the sales side or on the purchase side. Then you have the ability to define how you want a tax to be computed. Usually you will have lots of taxes that are percentages of the price, but you can have a fixed price, or you can also use a percentage of the price, but saying that it is tax included. You have an amount. Here we define 15%, but of course if you change one of the settings here, it will change as well. Here it's not percentage anymore, but those are amounts. And you have also the tax account that will be used when you are going to have this tax on an invoice, being a vendor bill or a customer invoice. Now if we go into advanced options, you'll see that you can also choose a different label on the invoices, which will be different than the one you have here. This one will be the one that will appear on the invoices. We will see that in a few minutes. Then you have a tax group. This can allow you to group the taxes per group on the invoices and on the sale orders. And then you can add some tags. And as the help here shows, it's mainly used for reporting purposes on the tax report. On the right part of the screen, you can also select if you want to include the tax in the price, and also if this tax should affect then the subsequent taxes, which would mean that the amount of the tax will also be in the base price for computing the next tax. And then you have also a tax adjustment capability. And if you check this box, it will allow you to use that tax for some manual tax adjustments. If you set this field to true, if you check that box, you will be then able to use this tax when you click here on Make Manual Tax Adjustments. It's just a way for us to give a solution for people that created maybe invoices with taxes but then made a mistake and want to make some adjustments after the invoices have been validated. For now, let's uncheck this box, discard the changes we made to the tax, and we are going to use the second tax here in a vendor bill. Of course, we'll then have a look at the effects of these taxes both on the bill and on the tax report. So let's go to the purchases, create a vendor bill. You can see that it's the first one I'm creating. Here I will select one of my vendors and add a product for the first line, and the second line I will leave it that way. First thing you can see is that the taxes have been selected here on the right according to the tax name, and even though on the first line I had a product and on the second line I don't have a product, every time I had a tax being applied. This can be explained easily by going on the product. If you open the configuration of the product, you can see that in the invoicing tab I have by default a customer tax of 15% and a vendor tax of 15% as well. So it can explain why I have the taxes being applied here. But you can see that on the second line I don't have a product being selected. However, I still have a tax being applied. This is another point in the configuration that is important. When you have a look at the account here that was selected, it is a default value for this place. You can check here the definition of the account, and you can see that by default also I ask that every time I select this account, a default tax of 15% is applied. So with my settings, having a product or no product will give the same result in the taxes column. For the first part, that's because I have a product and I define that this product is linked to a 15% tax, and for the second line, that's because I link this setting to the account. Now let's validate this invoice after I change the price of this product and see the effect of the validation of the invoice. I can already tell you that here you have all the groups of taxes being computed, so you can see the tax amount by tax group, but you can see the taxes as well here under the subtotal. After having validated my invoice, I can have a look at my journal entry here. This is the journal entry of my validated invoice, and you can see that we have one particular line, which is the tax line with the tax account that was defined on my tax, and the label being linked to the tax I had on my invoice lines. And of course, the amount here represents 15% of the total amount we have on the lines about this expense account. Now, of course, this was my first invoice in my company, and if I want to have a look at the effect of these taxes on my tax reports, I can go into Reports and select Tax Report, and you can see here that for the purchase side I only have one tax that was used, and you have the base amount on the left and the tax amount on the right. Of course, if I create now a customer invoice, let's imagine that I'm picking another partner, selecting the same product, validating my invoice, you'll see in my tax report that I have a new entry here for the sales side. Now, Let's dive into the concept of fiscal positions. In fact, fiscal positions exist in order to apply the correct tax to partners, being customers or vendors. As I mentioned earlier, maybe you are selling your products to different partners located in different countries, and usually for those different partners you won't apply the same set of taxes. How then can you choose among all the taxes you have which one should be applied to a specific partner? Well, let's see how the tax position works, because the tax position will answer that question. As for the taxes, the fiscal position can be defined and configured in the configuration here. You have under the taxes, you have fiscal positions. You can see that at the moment I don't have any fiscal position existing, but I'm going to create the first fiscal position I want to use. I will create a fiscal position that will apply specific taxes to my customers in Canada, in a situation where I'm an American supplier for that customer. So here I will ask to detect automatically my fiscal position, and this is really important. It will allow you to ask Odoo to apply automatically this fiscal position if the supplier or the customer is part of either one of the country groups that will be listed here or one of the countries that is listed there. So I will select here Canada, and I can specify some federal states or zip ranges. So you can imagine that this is really useful when you have to define fiscal positions according to different states in the US, for example. But here I will just make it quite simple and say that when I am selling to somebody located in Canada, I won't apply my 15% tax, but I will instead apply no tax. Here it is another tax I defined, so you can see that here first tax I selected here is my sales 15% tax, and I will apply that no tax rules for the sales as well. I'm saving this fiscal position, and while I could be eventually forcing this fiscal position on my Canadian customer, I could go here in the accounting and specify a fiscal position. I won't do that for now. I will let Odoo decide based on the country. You can see that here my client, my customer, is linked to Canada. I didn't put any street or city, I just said, well, he's from Canada. Now, if I create a customer invoice, you'll see that as soon as I select my customer, here, we have under the Other Info tab, we have the fiscal position that has been selected. And this will influence, of course, the tax that will be selected with my product. And if I select miscellaneous, here you can see that the tax has switched. It's not 15% anymore, it's the no tax that has been selected. So this means that if I save and then validate, of course you will have no tax. I will validate here, and you have no tax on the invoice, and of course no tax on the journal entry. And of course, in your tax report, this will appear as well. Of course, there won't be any tax being linked, but you will see how much you have sold with the base amount linked to the no tax. I guess you can already see how this comes handy when you want to apply different taxes to different customers or suppliers based on their location. As mentioned, I kept the example here quite simple by just defining it, this fiscal position by linking it to the Canada, but it could be, as I said, linking a fiscal position to a federal state or to some zip range. So let's wrap up all of this. We have seen how to configure the taxes first. We have seen the effect of all the tax configuration on our customer and vendor bills. You remember here we had different taxes, well, the same tax, but on our first example on a product, and in the second line, even if there was no product involved, we had a tax. we had the opportunity to have a look at the tax reports and the consequences of our invoice validation. Then we saw that it was possible to define in Odoo which kind of taxes I wanted to apply according to my partner's location. Well, that's then pretty much it. See you in the next video.